Welcome to Talk About Tatooine. I'm Andrew.
I'm Nathan.
And we are twin brothers here to bring you what's new in nerddom and give colorful commentary on our favorite subjects. Welcome to our cantina. Grab a drink and settle in as we set course for realities beyond our own.
Woohoo!
What are you drinking today?
A little bit of Diet Coke because it's the afternoon and we're going to go hang out with people later. And I need to be able to rely on caffeine.
I'm drinking H2O with liquid IV in it, also known as slippery water, because that's what it feels like when you drink it.
Slippery water. Blah.
Yeah, it's more slippery.
That's true. It is. It does have a slightly different consistency to it. What are we talking about today?
Speaking of a slightly different consistency, episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Andor were directed by a new director. Susanna White directed all 3 episodes, and so something I noticed for the first 3 episodes, they had a singular director as well. So that's why we're seeing these 3 episode story arcs that are very, they just really build well together. We didn't see this sort of consistency in things like the Book of Boba Fett, The Mandalorian, or what else have we seen yet?
I'm trying to see. Obi-Wan, yeah. I was going to say Clone Wars, but I don't actually know if any of the Clone Wars were done by different directors or not.
I don't think... Well, they might have been. Anyway, do you want to give us a brief summary? Let's start with episode 4.
Absolutely. So if you guys haven't tuned in by this point, we are going to be talking spoilers about episodes 4, 5, and 6. So this is your official warning that we are going to be going over spoilers with things like that.
We're going straight into spoiler territory.
Yep, we're diving right in. So in episodes 1, 2, and 3, basically we see that, again, as Andrew just mentioned, we see that first story arc end and the second story arc begin. We are getting into the next planet. So Andor officially joins the heist that is going to be going on. That's kind of the whole reason he got hired, and he basically got exfilled from the previous planet that he was on. You get right into episode 4. He was not well received by the team, which was interesting, and we're actually going to talk about how that relationship develops through episodes 4, 5, and 6. You kind of see this slow build up to the heist, which does happen in episode 6. That does make sense, and it all happens during a kind of a really cool celestial event as well. That's something I'm really excited to talk about. We'll talk about the Eye. Very, very fun. Super cool. Really loved it. And then we will get into actually some fun stuff, which I was really excited to see this turn in a Star Wars media. You have this team of characters and not all of them survive. So really, really excited to talk about that as well, because I feel like that's Star Wars actually being a little bit more brave with their character choice and not necessarily just being like, oh, they're the good guys, everyone needs to survive until like the very end, kind of Rogue One-esque, which is kind of ironic because that's the character that we're in the movie we're building up to. But yeah, we see quite a bit happen. Really, really cool stuff. Graphics, lots of stuff, and I actually have a lot of different questions about what happened as well, with different characters, and I'm kind of interested to see how you see kind of the buildup of characters through 1 through 3, and then you don't actually see some of these characters at all almost in episodes 4, 5, and 6. So pretty excited to see what's going to go on with those. Remind me, what's the name of the planet they're on? It starts with an A. I can't remember. Aldhani, thank you. I wrote it down somewhere, and I think I wrote it down for some reason on a piece of paper, which was a dumb thing to do.
Are you a caveman? Jeez.
Ooga booga.
Confused Unga Bunga?
Yeah, so I don't know why I wrote it down, because that was a stupid idea, but yes, so they just got to the world of Aldhani. There's an Imperial outpost there that is holding on to a huge amount of credits, because basically how they explain the reason that outpost is holding so many credits is it is kind of the center of different shipping lanes, and it's so inconvenient for other people to go to. It actually made for a good spot to hold these credits. We're pretty excited to talk about that. I have a lot of different things I want to go through, but I want to make sure I'm not just hogging the conversation. I mean, I'll go through my rating, and I'd love to hear yours as well. I gave this out of a score out of 10, these 3 episodes. I actually gave this an 8.5 out of 10, mostly because I thought the buildup was a little slow. And that's also because, to be fair, episodes 1, 2, and 3 were all released at the same time. So I just watched them consecutively. 4, 5, and 6 were released on a weekly basis. So I wasn't able to watch them all together. So that was probably what happened to that experience. that's okay. I mean, that's how we're supposed to watch TV normally. But I mean, we're so not used to that. We're used to just like whole series just like coming available. And so it does give a different viewing experience. But episode 6 was absolutely fantastic. I loved the way it went, just because it was like, it was anxiety producing in some places because you were like nervous for the characters. You were like, it held a good amount of suspense. And it was a different kind of story arc that we don't always see in the Star Wars universe, which is kind of that heist style.
For sure.
What would you say? What did you give it for your rating?
On average, this is going to sound harsh because I loved it. And it's, when I say the number, it's not going to sound like I loved it. For this arc, I gave it a 7.5.
Okay.
For episode 4, I gave it a 6. For episode 5, I gave it a 7.5. And then for episode
4 was a 6, 7 was a 7.5. Or sorry, 5 was a 7.5.
Yes, that one, that second one. And then episode 6, I rated a 9.
Yeah, that tracks. Episode 6 was so good.
It very literally had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. I'm really excited to see where this goes.
Absolutely.
2 other side plots that are happening during this that I'm really interested in. Deidre Morrow over at the ISB, she basically anticipated this whole thing. She said, the rebel activity we are seeing, anti-imperial activity we are seeing, is a coordinated rebel front.
Yeah.
And this was before the Aldhani heist even happened.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, this is exactly how I would do it. I think those were her words. And then the other minor story arc that's going on is the career trajectory of Deputy Inspector Karn. He's the guy who leads the strike team of pre-Moore officials in episodes 1, 2, and 3. And at the very beginning of episode 4, he gets fired.
Yep.
He really gets raked over the coals by the ISB, and then he gets raked over the coals again because he has to visit his mother.
Yeah, that's a weird interaction. Ugh. The dude goes home and he's like, I'm dejected, and his mom's like, you're a piece of crap. Like, you suck.
Yeah.
Ah.
Here are the notes I wrote about her Karn's mother. Let me tell you what, she's a piece of work. I think she actually invented gaslighting. She sucks.
Yeah, that was an interesting dynamic, which obviously is going to, like, I think they're going to go one of two ways with the character. I think he's going to be probably one of the main antagonists of the story. I think he's going to, like, either chase down Andor and all of the survivors with, like, renewed abandon. Like, he's just going to go crazy on them and just, like, do terrible things to try to, like, get them killed, or he's going to straight up defect. He's going to be like, okay, the Empire sucks. I'm going to go, because he's basically getting super mistreated, and I feel like they've shown previously in the Star Wars universe, it doesn't take much for people to defect against the Empire, so I feel like that could be a very easy route for him to take. I don't necessarily want him to defect, because I think that is the easy route. Like, when you're looking at it from a writing standpoint, I think it's just a little bit of, like, a path of least resistance. I think him getting, like, more enraged by those characters, I think, is a good way to develop his character. Yeah,
I agree. I think he's going to have a psychotic break and go outside of the law, which he says he values a lot, to pursue Cassian specifically. Real quick, I'm going to go over the members of the Rebel Cell. We're going to be using their story a lot as we go through our top 3 moments. So the Rebel Cell, we have Arvel Skeen. He is the sketchy dude who also served in an Imperial prison. He's got the chest tattoos, very, very skinny, and questions Cassian a lot. We have Terriman Barcona, or Barcona. I probably am pronouncing that right. Terriman is the ex-stormtrooper.
Yes.
Thank you. And then we have Karis Nemec, who just goes by Nemec. He is the Rebel True Believer, and he's the tech of the team. He uses, like, a lot of, like, really cool old tech to, like, get around things, like almost like analog versus art digital. It's very cool. Then there's Vel Sartha. She's the leader, and Cinta Kaz. She's the quieter one.
Yeah.
That's really the only word I have to describe her.
She's the healer. That's how I described her. She's the healer.
Yeah.
She's kind of the team medic. Yeah.
Okay, let's move into our top 3. Do you want to start us off?
Dude, the top 3 moments for this was definitely... so I thought the eye was super cool. I just thought the visual aspect that they brought to the movie with the eye. And so the eye is this celestial event that happens once every is it 3 years? Yeah, 3 years because I think it's Lieutenant Gordon says he's been stationed there 7 years and he's seen it twice already. So it is the 3 years. Really, really cool. I loved the effects that they did that. And they started it off really, really light. And it was almost subtle comparatively compared to when they got into like the full-fledged like Eye of the Storm later. And it was just amazing. I thought visually it was super cool. I would have loved to have seen that on like the big screen in like Ultra HD, but instead I watched it on a laptop. So, which was, I felt like I feel like I would have loved to see that on the big screen for sure. And I would say that was like my top of the top three for sure.
Do you have separate top threes for each of the episodes or just overall?
Just overall.
Okay. I will condense some of mine because some of mine, I actually didn't have top three things from episode 5. I feel like not a lot happens, but a lot happens. But I'll get to that in a little bit. Luthen Rail is always a win. This is Stellan Skarsgård character.
Mm-hmm.
He brings an intensity that is unrivaled, and he can just flip it like a switch. Like I love his little like. He's like, ha 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 ha! I'm going to practice laughing in the mirror because I'm now about to be with my Coruscanti colleagues. And then as soon as he is out of that, he just drops the mask and he's like, this is exactly how intense we need to be.
Yeah.
He's always a win. And his shop is just there's so many Easter eggs in that shop. I can't believe it.
The whole thing is meant to be an Easter egg, right? Like every single piece in there is like pieces from different movies and things like that. I think you even see one of the Twi'lek artifacts in there as well, and it's rumored that they're like, oh, it's Hera Syndulla's, and I'm like, you can't prove that. Like, she like more than just her have one of those. It's rumored that most families have one, so it's like it could be hers. I'm assuming they want people to think it's hers, but I'm like, chill out, guys.
Yeah, there's a lot of Twi'leks.
Yeah.
And a lot of families.
Yeah, like the Ryloth sector is huge. So to just assume that it's hers would be, I think, a little out of character. But I think it probably is somebody's important, or it wouldn't be there, right? Because if it was just like a random artifact, then like why would he collect it? Because he's got a lot of like really cool weapons and stuff in there. Mm-hmm. And most of I did like that Mon Mothma's husband was like an antique weapons collector. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that seems like the exact hobby for the douchebag that he is.
Which is interesting because she's like the cornerstone piece for the Rebel Alliance in as far as the legislative portion of the alliance. She's like she's the governmental figurehead essentially. And then her husband's like, I like cool weapons. And also people that are like he's just like, I don't know, he seems very basic imperial. I wonder actually
superficial.
I wonder if he actually shares like in the cause. I don't think he does. I think it's just Mon Mothma.
I was talking with my wife about this, and we watched the first episode, and we were like, and we're not pro-divorce, but we talked and we're like, ugh, they should get divorced. Like, they're just constantly sniping at each other, and ugh.
Yeah,
I'm assuming that would like look bad on her career or something. I don't know. I'm speculating.
I think he will die, but I don't know how.
Or he'll just leave her.
Yeah, who knows? I think once she starts getting into actually like supporting the Rebel Alliance and legislation that does support them, I think he's going to be like, whoa, we don't do that.
Yeah, he's like, how could you do this?
For sure. My second top 3 was actually a really small moment, and I believe it was in either episode 4 or 5. I can't even remember, but it was when Nemec, you see him writing his like manifesto. I thought that was really, really cool, but there was also a point there where you're like, this is a little bit of a smoking gun. You're like, something is going to happen to this character, because he's like, you find out that he's like really into it. You're like, okay, he's not only the team mechanic, but he's also like a writer, and he's like the true believer. And I was like, oh, that's super cool. I think they're going to do something cool with his character. And sure enough, they kind of do almost, because he comes, I mean, we already referenced that there's going to be spoilers. He becomes a martyr right away, almost. Mm-hmm. In a very sad way, actually. His death was super sad.
Oh my gosh. I actually jumped when I saw him get crushed, and having known real life people who have gotten into accidents like that, being crushed by heavy things, it's brutal. And they, other than an obvious amount of gore, it is a brutal way for him to die.
Yeah, that was definitely outside of like the realm of Like normally like Star Wars deaths, right, are like very instant, or like you get the thematic ones where somebody like gets their head cut off like Count Dooku, but it's like you see the shadow like kind of, or no, that's Jango Fett. You see the shadow of the helmet kind of fall away in episode 2. And then in episode 3, you just kind of see his like body, Count Dooku's body, fall over, and you're like, you put the pieces together yourself, but you don't actually see it. But in this one, you like straight up see that like piece of cargo run into him. There's a very abrupt like crunch like edited in there as well, and he's like, I can't feel my legs, and you're like, no, like
Yeah.
And they tease you a little bit because they're like, oh, we found a doctor, he's going to be okay, and you're like, oh yeah, Star Wars science, like. It's basically miracle workers. They're going to dunk him in a Bacta tank. They'll give him a cool suit or whatever, and he'll be fine. And they're like, nope, doesn't make it off the table. Super sad.
Yeah, because he has he goes into surgery in a guy's barn. The doctor who operates on him is not like doesn't have an operating room. They don't have Bacta. Like it just goes to show that this is where the rebellion is at this point. They are underfunded, undersupplied, and they're barely scraping by. And they're really punching up. We really see this rebel cell punch up. I mean, they steal a lot of credits. And I mean, they make galactic news with how successful they are. But we feel just the weight of these characters' sacrifices because we just spent the last 2 episodes getting to know them and caring for them. And that's actually why I really liked Rogue One, is because it spends a lot of the movie not only advancing the plot, but convincing you why you should care about these people.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you know they're going to die. But like in Andor, we don't know that these people are going to die. The rebellion kind of grows exponentially. I'm guessing from this point, that's kind of like one of my predictions. And by the time they're on Yavin and assault the first Death Star, they have a significant fighting force.
Yeah, they do.
This is just the beginning. I mean, we may see that Vel and Cinta live.
Well, so they didn't extract Cinta, right? She's still on the planet.
Nope.
I think she's still alive. I think Vel is, I think, going to be a main character going through. I actually think they're going to create some tension with Vel, Cassian, and Bix from episodes 1 through 3. I think those characters are going to eventually meet up in episodes 7, 8, and 9. That's kind of one of my predictions that I had, is those characters are going to interact, and there will potentially be some issues there. They did mention in episode 4 that, here's another prediction. I don't know if you caught on to this or not, but in episode 4, what is it? I think it's Skeen is mentioning that Cinta's already like taken, essentially. I think Cinta and Vel are in love. I think they're definitely in a relationship, and they're going to definitely go through that and kind of expand on that a little bit. And we'll see if Cinta ends up surviving, because I think that could be, if she dies or gets captured, which she very well could, since she didn't get extracted with them. I think that's kind of a prime opportunity for the Empire to pick her up and basically do what they do best, which is usually bad things. But I think that's going to further radicalize Vel, or that's just going to further the plot along, because they're going to be like, cool, we did this heist, and it's going to be a now what, and their next objective is going to be like, oh, well, we have people we need to extract, essentially. Mm-hmm. So I think there's going to be a couple of different things that are going to go through there. We'll just see, I mean, how the next 3 episodes go, and if they stick with the 3-episode story arc.
Yeah, I'm hoping we see what happens to Cinta in the next story arc, because when she's working with Vel and Vel has to rappel down over the side of the dam, Cinta just looks at her and just is like, this is not the time to freeze up. You need to go.
Yeah. She's
totally mission oriented, and which I think you're right about them being in love. I think that's alluded to based off of Skeen's comment and some of the kind of looks they give each other. I think that's just a thing. So that's a very like a really intense way to interact with, someone you're in love with, to say, okay, like it's the mission, like you got to act and you got to go.
Yeah,
it really added to the suspense of it all. But yeah, I'm really hoping that Cinta makes it out of it. At the time of filming, episode 7 is out, and I have watched it.
I have not.
So I'm not going to say anything. Trying to be respectful to you. But yeah, I'm hoping we find out what happens with Cinta and Vel.
Absolutely.
Did Lieutenant Gorn make it out?
Let me see. Yes, maybe. You know what? I don't know if he did, because the only survivors at the end of like that get extracted minus Cinta are Vel and Cassian, and then Skeen.
And Skeen.
But Skeen, I mean, I mean, it's even in his name. Like his name kind of is. It's written in a way to kind of like you hear a name like Skeen and you're like, I don't think you're a trustworthy person. I don't know if that's just me profiling him, but he gets shot. He basically like if you guys haven't watched this already, like you guys should know. We've warned you about spoilers, but he's basically, while his friend is getting like sutured up and he doesn't even know if they're going to survive, he gives Cassian the elbow and was like, hey, we could just leave and just split the pot 50-50. And you're like, dude, you're the worst. Like, are you, which is really uncharacteristic because he's super defensive of Cassian even being there. He's like, you don't belong here. You're not even with the mission. And then he gets really upset because he finds out he's being paid. And then like at the end, he's like, yeah, let's just split the money. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that really caught me off guard. I just didn't see it coming, especially with just how aggressive and hostile he is towards Cassian / Clem, because he literally has him at knife point at one point. He sneaks up behind him, puts a knife to his throat, and rips the Kyber necklace off of him, being like, who walks around with this much treasure hanging around their neck?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they find out, like, hey, he's a mercenary, he's being paid. They don't know by who. The cell doesn't actually know that Luthen is the one that is funding them and driving them towards this course, which is a really interesting thing. It's a very important way the rebels operate, and it's really, really important because if that cell were to have failed and been captured, the only one who could have broken was Vel and Cassian.
Yeah.
So the information is mostly compartmentalized, and we see Luthen's character actually really struggle with this later. He's talking to his assistant and he goes, I messed up. I brought someone else in. And like he's like, man, if Cassian doesn't get out of this, I'm going down. And he like even tells his assistant, like, do you have, he didn't call it a go bag, but he said, do you have your go bag ready?
Yeah.
Like it's a really quick interaction. Like they don't spend a lot of time for the listener to be like, pause at that moment and be like, hey, do you understand the stakes here? They just expect you to be listening, pick it up, and move on.
Yeah.
There's a lot is going on.
So. Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of moving pieces. I did like how they interacted with the people on Coruscant. Who else's character? They interact with a lot of people on Coruscant. Karn's character, the deputy investigator, and Lieutenant Miro, the ISB agent, who is like, hey, she's the one giving red flags. I think she's going to be the main antagonist. My theory is she's going to be the main antagonist. Karn is going to be teaming up with her. I think she's going to use him as boots on the ground, and they're going to keep moving this forward. That's kind of my prediction.
I think that's actually really interesting. I never even thought about that. I do want to go back to Skeen a little bit. Let's talk about that interaction that he has with Cassian. So Cassian totally guns him down. He really Han Solos him.
I love how quick he makes that decision too, because he's like, let's split the money, and it's like 10 seconds later, Cassian's like, no, dude, you're the worst. And he shoots him. But then you immediately realize, you're like, that was the correct choice. And you're like, now he has to explain it to somebody who's probably already super volatile right now, because Vel is like trying to get her team like back together. They like everything, like they succeeded, but with everything possibly that could have gone wrong with them still flying out happened, essentially.
Yep. And I mean, at this point with Cassian, who takes his cut and leaves, she's the only surviving.
Yeah, in her world, she's the only survivor.
Yeah, she has no idea what happened to Cinta.
Yeah, I'm assuming she's assuming that Cinta's still alive. But my next question is like, what are they going to do with that money? Like, is that designated to go somewhere, or did Luthen just want them to rob them, and then they get to use the money on whatever?
I'm assuming they're going to use the money to buy basically equipment to fund more and more military type strikes and more guerrilla attacks against the Empire. I think this is where we're going to see the rebel fleet start to be assembled.
Ooh, that would be awesome.
I think they're going to take that money. They'll probably buy the X-Wings that turn into Rogue Squadron, the actual ships.
That would be awesome.
They will probably buy the U-Wings. And then we see, and actually the show Star Wars Rebels, that's where they acquire some of the Y-Wings, I believe.
Y-Wings and the B-Wing.
The Y-Wings and the B-Wings. Well, the prototype B-Wing at that point. It takes a really long time for it to get to production. which is why we don't see it until
Episode 6.
episode 6.
Mhm.
And then the A-Wings, actually they might acquire the A-Wings as well, because the original A-Wing squadrons are around when Star Wars Rebels happens. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
I would love for them to spend in episode 7 and 8 just a little bit of time of that like kind of lore building behind like the rebellion, and like actually like start to put some more historical components to like actually go through and say like, oh, they used this money to buy those ships. And like when Mon Mothma was like going through, she put this piece of legislation through, which allowed like people on Alderaan and like other like sympathizing planets to do this. And then they like, for example, started looking into, hey, I would love to see some more of the logistics behind it. I think that would be amazing. So imagine even just them being like, hey, this is what we're going to, here's the producers that we're going to buy all of our blasters from. Here is the armor styles that we're going to buy, because they do have uniforms. Like when people enter the Rebel Alliance, they don't just be like, all right, whatever you're wearing is what you're going to wear. They're like, no, we have uniforms. Like we have, like, this is an actual like organized military. I think that'd be super cool for them to like go through and actually like, or at least see it happening in the background. Maybe they like walk by and somebody's like talking to like a dealer and they have like several different types of blasters, and you have them like writing notes or something like that. Mm-hmm. And you just like have them allude to like, hey, we're using that money to buy supplies, figure out like where our supply chains are going to go to and from. We're going to actually determine all these logistics. I think that'd be super cool. And the way Disney does a really, really good job at putting in all those Easter eggs, they could make that happen in like 30 seconds. You wouldn't have to dedicate too much of the episode to it. You could just have a quick interaction, but have it loaded with inference and really like establish some behind the scenes lore essentially for the universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, honestly, I think we will see some of that. In Andor, we see the first reference to the year naming convention of BBY, before the Battle of Yavin. It's the first time in Star Wars film we see this, which is a really cool kind of nod. Not a lot of time until Yavin.
Yeah. I didn't even notice that. What episode was that in? And or
episode 1.
Episode 1. Okay.
Episode 1, very beginning. So this is the year. I think it was like, I want to say it was like 5 PBY or something. I could be wrong.
So only 5 years before episode. Yeah. So only 5 years before episode 4. That's a pretty short time. Which
really short time frame.
Which 5 years before the Battle of Yavin is roughly. I mean, you don't actually know how much time passes in episode 4, so it's roughly like slightly sub 5 years before the Battle of Scarif. So that's pretty cool.
Yep. Okay, let's move on to theories. We've talked a little bit about our theories, but I want to share my theory with you. In one of these episodes, Mon Mothma talks about wanting to bring more people in. Mon Mothma talks about wanting to bring more people in, and Luthen, I think, says no. It's like, hey, you can't do that. Like, we need to compartmentalize this information so that we can survive. And I think the people that Mon Mothma wants to bring in are the Organas. I think we're going to see pre-Rogue One Leia during this time, and probably even Bail. More of Bail, which he's great. So
yeah, I do love his character.
He showed up in Obi-Wan, so we know that's on the table, and I would love to see him. I would actually like to see Bail Organa take more of a seat in, not take a seat, take more of a stand in these episodes to really just hammer it home that like Alderaan has been an absolute pain in the Emperor's side.
I mean, it is the first planet they decide to just straight up execute, or I guess technically second because they did blow up Scarif, but it wasn't like a full destruction of the planet, or not Scarif, Jedha. Thank you.
Jedha was a single reactor ignition. I mean, it was an apocalyptic event. It didn't destroy the planet,
but it's unlivable.
Physically, but it did. Yeah, it killed everyone on it.
Yeah.
Like, no. Okay, yeah.
Absolutely. I kind of talked about a few of my theories already. I do think the remaining character, I think everyone they've introduced in the series so far is going to be the main cast moving forward. So I think episodes 1, 2, and 3, and then separately 4, 5, and 6. I think all of the remaining characters, so Bix, Cassian, Vel, potentially Cinta, I think they are going to form up and form some sort of team, and I think they're going to be Luthen's rebel cell moving forward.
Mm-hmm. their psyops team.
Yep, absolutely. I kind of hope, and I don't know. I almost want to call this a theory, but it's more of just a hope. I really hope they get into more like espionage activities.
Oh, they will.
So
I totally think they will. I think we're going to see Cassian gun down a lot of people.
Yep. We should keep a kill count or something for him, because he's done quite a bit so far.
Cassian kill count.
Yeah.
I'll go back and watch and take a tally. What kind of questions did you have?
Some of the
things are standing out that you don't really have answers for.
There was a few things that I didn't really have answers for. So there was a few assumptions that was made during the heist. So one of my questions was like right when this happened, and I was like writing notes while the episode was happening. Is the commandant actually dead? Because he essentially has what is assumed a heart attack, right? Because he's like pushing around all that stuff and then just goes what and just like falls down. I'm like, okay, but very shortly after everybody leaves, like there are other people on the planet. Like, did they get him help? Like, because heart attacks aren't always lethal. So I'm wondering if he's alive or dead. And I think if he's dead, I think they're going to label that not only a robbery, but I think they're going to call that like a political assassination as well.
Yeah, I think he's for sure dead. They made him to be super, super unlikable so fast. He's like, look at these savages. We'll give them this dirty pelts. Shut up, boy. I'm going to kick the crap out of you. Like, abusing his kids. So I'm like, they're not going to bring this guy back. Or if they do bring him back, Cassian's just going to have to assassinate him.
Potentially, yeah.
But I think he's dead. I think he's dead.
One thing I was surprised with, and I wrote this down as more of a rhetorical question because he didn't need to be in the episode, but I wrote down, why wasn't Crybaby Cop in episode 6? Crybaby Cop referring to what I referred, that's my nickname for Lieutenant, or for Investigator Karn, because that's just kind of how he is. In episodes 4 and 5, he's just sitting there kind of moping. And I was like, why isn't he in episode 6? This is weird. But I think mostly that's because I think he's going to come back in episodes 7, 8, 9 in a big way.
Yeah, we're not done with him, I don't think.
What kind of questions did you have?
I really want to know what happens to Cinta.
Yeah.
I want to know what happens to Cinta and the Donnies themselves, because Lieutenant Gorn, he doesn't translate correctly on purpose when the Commandant are talking to him, or when the Commandant is talking to the locals.
Yeah.
They go like, he's like, they're just so happy you're here. And they are like, if you didn't have blasters on you, we would cut you right now.
Yep.
So I'm really curious as to see what's going to happen to the Donnies, what's going to happen to Cinta. I don't think it's going to be good.
Yeah, who knows? It could be one of the first like planets that like quote unquote the rebellion take back.
Well, I think the Empire is going to make an example of them, and they are going to do a little bit of a genocide and just kill everyone. I think they're going to take the rest of the money that's in the garrison, they're going to relocate it to a different planet, and they are going to burn the earth and kill all the people. And if Cinta's gone to ground, I don't know if she's going to make it.
Yeah, we'll see. I think that could definitely be something that they go for. That's got big Empire vibes. One additional note I did have is we talked about the props that they were using in episode 4, the specific blasters. It is confirmed they are energy weapons.
Yes. I had so much written up about like the symbolism of using the AK-47 as a weapon of the rebellion, because this the Kalashnikov was made in the 50s, so during the height of the USSR.
Quick correction, the Kalashnikov was made in 47. That's why it's called the AK-47.
Thank you. It was their symbol of their power, essentially. And I was going to explain why. Oh yeah, this like it's going to be like a kinetic weapon, or what we call bullets.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a kinetic style weapon, and that's because like the rebels are super underfunded and all this stuff, and it just ends up being an AK-47 that shoots blaster bolts.
Yeah.
Which didn't bother me, but it did bother you quite a bit.
I thought it was a little bit world breaking, which was kind of annoying. Who knows? We might have gun nuts who are gonna pop in and be like, "You're wrong," because they get really upset by that kind of stuff. Which I hope they do get a little
Hey, if
upset.
that means
I think it would be hilarious.
if that means people getting into our podcast, I'm all for it.
I know, right? No, but
more listeners.
I still was kind of like, okay, I don't really like that they used it as a prop. I just thought that was like kind of annoying. It does have some symbolism for like real world, but like again, it's sci-fi, not real world. So I felt like that it was just a little bit more immersion breaking. But who knows? Maybe they like make a comment about how they get to upgrade later, because like maybe it is a really like rundown level or just a really cheap blaster rifle. Like it's just one of those ones that are like, hey, this is all we could get. Maybe they're stolen. Maybe they didn't even buy theirs. You know, there's a lot that could go into that, and maybe they get a chance to upgrade their weapons and they're like, oh, finally we don't have to use these old like junkers anymore. Things are practically like 5,000 years old, or however they want to phrase it, you know?
Yeah. It kind of breaks ranks with what is typically done in the Star Wars prop department as far as weapons goes, because typically what we see older real weapons that are then heavily modified to look space age. We see that in the DL-44. That is, I mean, it's like an old like German style pistol or something that's been heavily modified to look like a blaster, so it has these strong real world roots, but then looks like it's not from our universe. And we see the same thing with the Youngling Slayer 5000. I mean, Luke's lightsaber that he gets from Obi-Wan. That's like a part of like an old camera. It's called like a Graflex. It's like a flash bulb or something. Yeah, it's part of a camera. It's apparently it was super common in the era that George Lucas was filming back then. A lot of the film nuts were like, is that a piece of a camera he's got in his hand? Yeah, yes, it is.
Well, and to your point, I think you do have some good points. And to even reinforce that, it's not uncommon for look at the Wookiee's bowcaster. It's a crossbow. Like there's no question about it, and they're just like straight up. They're like, hey, can you just put some bulbs on the end and like make it shoot lasers? But it's a crossbow. You know, they even go into like lore how like the Wookiees are the only people strong enough to work the action on it, and it's like, okay, this is a crossbow for space apes, but all right. Yeah. So you do have some merit with your theory there, absolutely.
But that being said, I do wish they would have modified it to where it was more of their own thing, and just instead of an AK-47 that shoots blaster bolts.
Yeah.
And I'm probably going to really offend the prop maker who made this, but yeah, I think you're right. I think it's lazy.
A little bit.
It didn't take me out of it. I was just like, oh, interesting, and then I moved on.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Star Wars is really known for their props. They have some of the. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to like the Star Wars prop exhibit at the Pop Culture Museum in Seattle when it's been in town, formerly known as the EMP. It was awesome. My wife and I went before the dark times, and it was awesome. It was so cool.
They do have some pretty cool stuff. That's all I have written for episodes 4, 5, and 6. My overall impression was just that I really liked it. I'm really excited to see where the series is going to go next. Do we want to get into any pieces of news?
I do not have any news that I want to report on this week. I didn't really find anything that really stood out to me or I thought was interesting. So just a couple movies coming out. Really excited for Wakanda Forever.
Did you watch that trailer?
Black Adam.
Who do you think think's the new Black Panther? Because it's one of the female characters now. Because Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace, is not obviously Black Panther.
Dude, yeah, that trailer almost made me cry. It almost makes me cry every time I watch it because Chadwick Boseman is so awesome.
My theory for that movie is Black Panther is now his ex-girlfriend.
Okoye?
Yeah.
It's hard to have interesting discord when you and I have the same ideas without actually. Yeah, I think it's her. I think it's Okoye 100%. For sure. I want it to be her. I think she's awesome. I don't see Shuri stepping up into that role. There is some theories that the Queen will take the role on, which I also would think would be cool. The Queen Mother.
I think that'd be pretty dope. I don't think it's Shuri. She's so much of that that STEM figure. She's the brain behind it. She's the Q of the entire movie. She is the absolute smartest person in the room, and I think they need to keep her character there because she does bring so much, and she's a really good representation piece as well. But in the general,
she's the Q to use the colonizer term.
I'm not British, I promise. Abort.
Log off.
Who plays the general?
Okoye is the she's in the Dora Milaje, and she is the one who stands up to Wakabi, the guy who's played by Daniel Kaluuya, the guy with the blue
I do like
energy
Wakabe.
cape.
He's fun.
The Black Panther's current girlfriend is Nakia, and then Ramonda is the Queen Mother, and then there's Shuri, and then Martin Freeman plays Everett Ross.
I love Martin Freeman. He's like one of my favorite characters, and I love that he plays such a serious character in that movie. Like when he's also Bilbo Baggins. you're so like he has such a, I think he has a really good range, and he does a really good job in Sherlock as well.
Actually, that's what I think of. I think of his role as Watson in Sherlock before I think of Bilbo.
That's fair. But yeah, really excited for that movie. I haven't watched Black Adam yet. I know you have, and you guys, if you haven't yet, make sure you guys follow us on Twitter at Talk Tatooine on Twitter. You'll see different like movie reviews. Basically, if we can't spend the time to cover it in the podcast, we'll probably cover short things like that in tweets. And if you see a -A, that's from Andrew. If you see a -N, that's from me, Nathan. So that way you guys know who is writing it. But usually you'll see me retweet most of his stuff as well. Via my Finley the Dog Gaming or my personal handle as well, so you guys can see that there. Yeah, I don't have a ton of news either. We talked about a lot of news pieces last week, but I am definitely I'll be doing a little bit more research to kind of see what's going on. I know there's different movie and game releases that I would like to bring up as well for either potential episode topics or just pieces of news as well.
For sure. And then let's give our listeners a little bit of a sneak peek of the other topics that we want to cover on the podcast. Episode 4, we are going to talk about Halo and the state of the game.
Ooh.
We are going to also do an episode on mobile gaming. We are going to do our final review of Andor once all the episodes have come out. So please, you'll see that coming out in the next couple of weeks. What other ideas are we looking at?
You know, I mean, the list is really, really long. It really just depends on what order we want to put them in. I've got way too many notes for episode 4. I mean, I've actually got a bunch of news things already, really news pieces written down for that as well. But those are going to be a little bit more thematic to that. But we're going to be talking about stuff coming out. I mean, there's like potentially a new Warhammer Codex coming out. We're potentially getting into 10th edition is is kind of rumored coming up soon. So we're going to talk about that quite a bit. You know, the more content we get for Warhammer and Leagues of Votann, we're going to talk about gameplay and how the community is interacting with that. Because again, we do have a lot of different hobbies that we want to share with you guys. Darktide, I believe, did they just finish an open world beta? Or a closed beta?
They just finished their closed beta.
So I'm excited to kind of dig into that and do some research to kind of relay to you guys to see what's going to happen, because I haven't seen anything negative about that yet, which I'm very excited about. There's also some other Warhammer games. The Warhammer game, for example, Shoota's Blood and Teeth actually just came out like 2 days ago, October 20th. We're recording this on the 22nd, and it's like a side-scrolling orc-based like arcade game. I haven't played that, but maybe it'll be cool. You know, there's lots of different stuff coming out. There's new Minecraft games, there's new Xbox games always coming out. So there's an infinite amount of stuff. I'm just about to finish the Horse Heresy series myself. It really just depends. You know, we want to hear from you guys, what you guys want to hear, but we have dozens of episode ideas that we want to talk about already. It's just going to take us time to cover it all. We want to finish out here, guys. Thank you guys for listening and taking your time to be with us here today. If you guys want to hear more about us and about a specific topic, you can follow us at Talk Tatooine on Twitter, like we mentioned earlier. Or if you want to see the video format for the show, we are on YouTube at Talk About Tatooine. So full title on the YouTube handle. And we look forward to seeing from you guys. Until next time, may the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.